Trees are an incredible part of God's creation, and Colorado is lined with millions of acres of national forest, with trees that line mountains and rivers, hills and woods. And who doesn't like trees? They are beautiful. A walk in the forest in the cool of the day refreshes one's soul. And trees, by their very nature, are giving, providing food, shelter, wood to build our homes, and tools to enrich our lives. In the Bible, trees are a source of life and blessing and are found throughout the biblical narrative. In fact, there's a tree associated with almost every major character in the Bible and almost every major theological concept as well. And next to God and people, trees are mentioned in the Bible more than any other living thing. The Bible begins with the Garden of Eden, and in that garden was the tree of life. Noah was told to build an ark made out of gopher wood, which comes from a tree. And that ark saved Noah and his family and provided salvation for all of humanity. So many of the Psalms were written by David, and the first Psalm in the Bible speaks about having a tree that's planted by the water. And that tree draws its source from God and God's laws and God's ways. One of the famous stories of David was after he was anointed king and the Philistines decided to make war upon him. And David asked whether he should fight the Philistines. And God said yes. And God appeared in the balsam trees. They're shaking the trees and shaking the Philistines with fear as God would fight on David's side. So trees are a source of life in the Bible. But trees are also associated with death and sacrifice. In the garden, there was not only the tree of life, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God told Adam and Eve that if they ate of that tree, they would surely die. And indeed, that day, death entered into the world. Noah, when he exited the ark and was up on the mountain, there offered a burnt offering or sacrifice to God, burning that wood to make that sacrifice. Abraham, when he went up on the mountain to sacrifice Isaac, which of course God did not have him do, he instead sacrificed a ram which had been found with wood that Isaac had carried up on the mountain. And Jesus Christ himself would die on another high place, on a hill outside of Jerusalem, on a tree, a wooden cross. In the summer of 1994, in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, lightning struck nearby Storm King Mountain. It was the hottest summer on record, and there had been very little rainfall. The mountain was a powder keg waiting to explode. And soon the fire began to rage. But initially, the fire was assigned a lower priority by the authorities, because at the time there were many other fires that were going on in the region. And this fire on Storm King Mountain was located in an inaccessible area. But as the fire continued to grow, the local residents alerted the authorities to the growing danger. Hotshots and smoke jumpers were brought in from Oregon to combat the fire. But mistakes were made. A lunch break was taken at an inopportune time, and personal photos were shot as well. And a cold front came in and mixed with the hot air, and the fire exploded, advancing 450 feet in the matter of 15 seconds. And 14 firefighters lost their lives. One of the firefighters, Don Mackey, had led a group safely out of the fire. But when he saw that some were still in the fire and in danger and left behind, he went back to save them. And sadly, Don Mackey lost his life. He sacrificed his life trying to save the lives of others. This is what Christ did for us. He sacrificed himself to redeem us and to snatch us from the fire and from the judgment that we actually deserve. The fire on Storm King Mountain was started by lightning. It's really hard to blame anyone for this. But imagine if you or I had started this fire. Imagine if we were the ones to blame. How would that make you and I feel? You see, probably none of us think of ourselves as a bad person. After all, I'm not a murderer. I haven't killed anyone. What do I really deserve? Do I really deserve fire and punishment and death? But you see, God is a holy God. And any sin, no matter how small, separates us from God. There's a wide gulf and a chasm between us and Him. And we cannot cross it ourselves, no matter how hard we try. It would take the death of Jesus Christ to allow us to cross over and to be back united with God and with others. Jesus at His trial was declared guilty, though He was innocent. And He was beaten and mocked and led away in shame. There dying on the cross, naked, with the judgment of the Roman government and all the people, mocked and made fun of, crucified there for all the world to see. And this death was utterly shocking to the Jewish people, for it said in the Hebrew Scriptures that anyone who was hanged on a tree and died on a tree was under a curse. There He took on all of our guilt and all of our shame. He felt forsaken by God as He took on the sins of the entire world. He did this so that we might have salvation, forgiveness of sins, and redemption in Him. When we truly acknowledge and understand the depths of our sin, our guilt, and our shame, then we can move to another state, and that is of incredible thankfulness for what God has done for us. The Apostle Peter wrote how Noah and his family were saved by the ark, which was made out of wood, and were brought from the old life of sin to the new world in which they were given new life. And he says that baptism now saves you also, not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience towards God. God does all the saving, but we place our faith in Him by trusting in Him, repenting of our sins, and being baptized into His name. And if we've done that, or we've asked God and others for forgiveness, we can go on with a clear conscience, knowing that we have truly been forgiven and living lives of incredible thankfulness. During the coronavirus, many have felt guilt and sometimes even shame. Some have felt guilty because they haven't gotten sick and they've continued to enjoy the blessings of life. Others have felt guilt or shame because they may have brought sickness into someone's life. Know that no matter what we've done, we can go to God and others and ask for forgiveness. If we have hurt someone, whether inadvertently or perhaps out of carelessness, we can ask them to forgive us and ask God to forgive us as well. So how about you? What guilt or shame have you struggled with in your life? And what do you feel that God is calling you to do?